Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. We're gonna have a broader look at the semiconductor space, especially mixed in with the AI hype, or let's say maybe not AI hype, I don't know what your point of view. But we can see that this interesting article came up on WCCF Tech a few days ago. According to this article, Nvidia starts to divert orders away from Supermicro, SMCI, since we know that SMCI had quite a large question marks hanging up over them. Actually, we can see here that SMCI went all the way up to 120, or well above 120 US dollar, and now it's back to 20 US dollar. And all this within a span of 1 year, I would say even less than 1 year. If you look at the 1 year graph here, you can see that it's like essentially taking the stairs up and the stairs down. So they've done over 1 year 3% down, whereas at some point they were like, I don't know, 400-500% up. Or so it's been quite a strange year, but I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I think you should definitely give this gentleman a follow, Mojo Flying. I've been following him for quite a while. He's covering this whole, supposed Nvidia SMCI potential fraud or a Ponzi scheme. Is difficult to say. Again, the article says that Nvidia is diverting away a lot of orders from SMCI. How do we know if Nvidia is involved? I don't know, to be honest. You need to do quite a lot of research in order to even get to the surface level of this. I will try to do my best in the upcoming weeks to follow this more closely. But I mean, I've seen, some start rumors kind of coming up over the past, let's say, 3 or 4 months regarding this issue. So I'm not 100% sure about this. I don't have any opinion from my point of view, but I think at least we should grow a little bit of worry about this situation. And on that term, if you go back to the list that I have here, remember that there's a lot of good opportunities in the semiconductor space. Not all of them have been, going skyrocketing this year. In fact, again, look at AMD there. It's been, it's sitting there at 147 US dollar after it kind of skyrocketed 6 months ago or so to well over 200. Can see that it peaked in, I don't know, 210, 227 on the hourly chart, I think. So it's been down since, but I've made my case that AMD, I think, at these prices makes a really good sense. Remember that you get exposure to, if you're looking at AMD, you get exposure to both AI GPUs, the CPUs, the consumer laptop market, the consumer DIY, gaming market, the PS5. So AMD is much more diversified, and as we are seeing potential that they are getting, some substantial share of, AI GPUs, I think it makes more sense. If you want to play the AI kind of play here so late into the game, well, it could potentially not be late. Remember that if you look at some of the other, let's say if you look at this one, for example, when they look at Intel and Intel's 18A node, I think it looks promising. And this is something that I also been mentioning, that Intel, in my view, is another good, I understand that there's a lot of bad stuff going on with Intel, for sure. Let's not pretend that everything is great. For example, even like Intel Arrow Lake, if you go to their consumer products, so let's go quickly to consumer CPUs here, for example, for 2024 in the blue there, you can find Intel. Arrow Lake, I would have loved to see them being much more competitive, to be honest. I wanted them to be much more competitive. The market needed that, but I think it turned out that Arrow Lake is not as good as we would have wanted it to be. Although it's lackluster in gaming, but in workloads where you need multi-core performance for video editing and stuff like that, it's very competitive, to be honest. But whereas Luna Lake on the mobile side is much more competitive for Intel. So it's a little bit give or take, but remember, the one that makes or break Intel obviously is not, a few designs here and there. The important thing for me is Intel's node comparisons to TSMC, and I'm still of the mind that they are getting much more competitive with TSMC. They are bleeding a lot of money, they are, but I believe 18A looks really promising. We know that Intel 4 was okay. Intel 3 was, I would say, more than okay. I would say halfway there to great even. And Intel 18A hopefully, they nail this. Looks great. Again, they are introducing a couple of innovations there with backside power delivery and gate all around, which no one else is doing until a couple of years from now. So I do believe that Intel is definitely looking like a potential good deal there. So Intel you couldn't look at, AMD you could look at. Nvidia looks great to me in terms of the numbers, right? If you're honest, the numbers don't look any kinda in bubble territory. Now the question with Nvidia is, can they sustain this kind of growth? I think they can for at least one more year. Remember that the AI stuff, when you're looking at AI, I don't believe the market is saturated, in terms of demand for the actual products. But on the terms of hardware side, who are we to tell that the price of these kind of GPUs won't kind of go down a little bit? How do we know that? If the volume is increasing so much, remember that the everything depends on the manufacturing capacity, and I think TSMC is kind of, they are currently sitting. Let's look at the latest estimations that I had for 2025. They are looking at 65,000 or so chip on wafer on substrate capacity per month, right? And to be honest, that number looks way too conservative. The latest numbers I've seen is close to 100,000, or in 2026 even well above 100,000, maybe 120,000 CoWoS chip on wafer on substrate manufacturing capability for TSMC each month. So the manufacturing is gonna make it possible to create a lot of more chips out there. And if the chips numbers are increasing so much, I do believe that the price potentially will have to come down a little bit, right? So there are a lot of dynamics here with the SMCI, potential fraud, how much involved are Nvidia, in booking revenue ahead of time. It's so much going on there. But then again, on the pure factual numbers, Nvidia doesn't look at all overvalued in my honest opinion at the current stage. You could argue that there seems to be reasonable growth in terms of revenue, and looks like gross profit is going to increase very reasonably, although not to the same extent that it's been over the past 18 months. So it's very, very complicated situation when you go to the general, let's say, AI discussions. I think OpenAI, for example, looks promising. They have a lot of different, let's say, rumors coming out where people are talking about next generation of ChatGPT and how much more competitive that will be and how much more it will enhance, let's say, people's work. So I think it's very difficult to have a clear, is the AI market in a huge hype kind of situation, or are we actually gonna see this continue? Remember that on the software side, we also have Palantir. The stock keeps also skyrocketing and the revenue keeps increasing. So there is some sort of demand out there for this automated, essentially, let's say, machine learning stuff in whatever shape or form, be it large language models or what it could be. So I have a very difficult time to tell you if we are going, if the next year or so is gonna be clear upwards or downwards. So all I'm gonna tell you, look at, for example, on the one of the leading indicators, TSMC. According to this report here, the October revenue increased by almost 29% or so, which is 24.8% increase month over month, which is insane. And the actual numbers is almost 10 billion US dollar. So again, it's on a run rate of 40 billion a year. So it's fairly, you could say, I don't know. It's fairly interesting. Sorry, my numbers were wrong. Obviously, it's not 40 billion a year. This was monthly revenue, so probably we are talking about, I don't know, 120 to 250 billion or so US dollar yearly run rate. But yeah, it's a TSMC that you should look at in terms of leading indicators. But then there's another dynamic into this. For example, this latest report that Taiwan law bans TSMC from 2 nanometer manufacturing abroad. I think this is something that is gonna be this way until TSMC is, on 14 nanometer, sorry, 1.4 nanometer or 14 angstroms, or even, let's say, smaller nodes. Then they possibly will have, 2 nanometer manufacturing in US, which is maybe 3 or 4 years from now. So it's a lot of different dynamic stuff happening. Then you have the political stuff going into this, geopolitics, like how is the new presidency gonna affect this whole segment. So all I'm gonna say to you that At the current stage, I look Intel interesting, and I will definitely find AMD very interesting. Qualcomm looks okay to me, but then they have this whole issue with Qualcomm and ARM going on, so it's very difficult to say. I find ARM a bit, expensive on our, earnings price to earnings ratio, but then I see, future for ARM where most of the stuff is gonna need to be run on ARM. So it's very, very difficult to tell you what to do or what not to do, but I think it's a good thing to be invested in the semiconductor space if you have a long-term horizon. So this video was not about, a single one of the companies. I think it's just, a lot of different dynamics going around right now, so you should be aware of them. But yeah, please follow, the TSMC monthly revenues, and again, look, and maybe you shouldn't buy the companies here that are on a 52-week, high. Maybe you should look at the ones that you believe in. Again, AMD, I truly believe in them. I think the risk reward for AMD is the best at the current stage. Intel has the potential to truly, give you a 10-20x. Like if 18A shows the promise, and if they actually leapfrog TSMC at least to some degree, I mean, there's nothing to say that this company would be a 2 trillion US dollar company. Why do I say that? Well, if you sort this by market cap, TSMC as 1 trillion US dollar, but remember, TSMC comes also with the whole geopolitical, headache on ahead of the valuation. So how much more higher would TSMC be valued at, let's say, if this was a US company with more of the fabs in, Europe or US? Well, I think it would be much more higher valued, maybe at even, let's say, a 30%, 40% premium would give you 1.5 trillion US dollar company, right? But then again, you have Intel is not only a fab, they also have a design side. They still hold like 70% of the total x86 CPU market share. So let's not forget that, although they're having huge issues right now. And if you value that another half a trillion when they get their act together with the support of the US government, I easily think this company could, like, literally by 2030 be 20x from here. I definitely see that path. I don't see that path for any other company on this list, at least not from the big ones like Nvidia, AMD, TSM, and so on. Maybe also ASML is a bit interesting, but I think, yeah, so for the moment, I'm gonna stick to AMD. If you hold a gun to my head for the moment, I think I'm gonna definitely stick with AMD. But Intel is also very lucrative at this stage. So that's gonna do it for today. Please like and subscribe, and please share your idea. What are your point of view? Do you think Nvidia is involved in this whole SMCI thingy? I mean, Nvidia and SMCI have truly, been collaborating revenue-wise over the past 18 to 24 months. So have they known about any of these issues? I don't know. It's difficult to say, but please engage in the discussions. And yeah, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.